All right, strap in everyone, because today we're diving deep into a case that's it's both fascinating and absolute chilling. You wanted to hear more about Sarah Jane Robinson, also known as the Boston Borgia. And wow, let me tell you this story. It's like something straight out of, I don't know, like a gothic novel. We've got some excerpts here from her Wikipedia article, so get ready to explore the life and crimes of this 19th century serial killer.
Yeah, what really gets me about Robinson is just like how she managed to pull off this double life for years. You know, like on the surface, total picture of respectability. Devoted wife, loving mother, active in her church. But underneath, oh man, there's this dark secret. She was using poison to like systematically get rid of everyone around her. And all for money.
It's almost like, I don't know, Shakespearean tragedy or something, right? Born in Ireland in 1838, then she comes to Massachusetts as a teenager, builds what seems like a normal life, marries this guy, Moses Robinson, has 8 kids, 5 of them survive. But even then, there are these signs, right? Like she's always moving, always dodging bill collectors, almost like she's running from something, even before the murder start.
Yeah, and that pattern of deception, it just continues when she starts, I guess you could say, her poisoning spree. Between 1881 and 1886, she poisons all these people. Her husband, her kids, her sister, her brother-in-law and nephew, even her landlord, and her weapon of choice, arsenic. Pretty easy to get back then. Rat poison, insecticides, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling to think that something so ordinary could be used for something so cruel. And she was meticulous too, right? All her victims with the same symptoms, stomach pain, vomiting, just awful. I can't even imagine the suffering.
No, absolutely. And the whole time she's playing this role, the grieving widow, the concerned mother, while she's the one orchestrating their deaths. 5 years. Think about that. 5 years of just calculated murder. And nobody suspects a thing. It really makes you wonder how she got away with it for so long.
Well, I mean, forensic science was basically just getting started back then. So, I mean, arsenic poisoning, it could look like a lot of other illnesses. Plus, she was smart using different doctors for each victim, making it harder to, see the pattern. It's like she was a, what do you call, criminal mastermind, every step planned out perfectly.
Yeah, but even the best laid plans, right? Her facade starts to crumble. And it all begins with the death of her son, William. He also falls victim to the poison. But before he dies, he manages to, point the finger at his own mother.
A deathbed confession, wow. Doesn't get much more dramatic than that.
No, it really doesn't. And thankfully, this doctor, he was suspicious about the whole thing, so he saved samples of William's stomach, for analysis. And guess what they found?
Arsenic, I'm assuming.
You got it. It was the evidence they needed, so they arrest Robinson. And this guy named Thomas R. Smith, big name in her church, it turns out, and her partner in crime.
Wait a minute, a church leader. Okay, now this is getting even more interesting. So what about Smith? Did he, get convicted with her?
Well, that's where things take a bit of a turn. See, at first they arrested Smith and another guy, Dr. Charles C. Beers. But in the end, charges against both of them were dropped.
So Robinson was left holding the bag, so to speak.
Looks like it. They charged her with multiple murders, including her son, William, and her brother-in-law, Prince Arthur Freeman. Robinson, she pleads not guilty, of course, even tries to, act insane. But a doctor says she's totally sane to stand trial.
So the walls are closing in, huh? No escape at this point. What happened at the trials?
Well, the first trial for William's murder, that one ended with a hung jury. They couldn't agree. But the second trial, this one for the murder of Prince Arthur Freeman, well, the evidence was just overwhelming. She was found guilty.
Guilty, wow. What was her sentence?
The court, they saw how serious her crimes were, so they sentenced Sarah Jane Robinson to death by hanging.
A death sentence, wow. I bet that sent shockwaves through the community. Can you imagine being there? In the courtroom, the tension, the weight of it all.
Oh, absolutely. This case had everyone captivated. The thought of a woman, a mother, committing these horrific acts, it was just deeply unsettling for people back then.
But even with a sentence like that, there's another twist to the story, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, actually.
Don't tell me she escaped.
No, not quite like that. While she was waiting for her execution, a petition started going around to commute her sentence. And believe it or not, the Governor's Council, they agreed. Robinson's death sentence. It was changed to life imprisonment.
Wow, that's a pretty big turn of events. I wonder what was behind that decision. Was there something more to the story, do you think?
Well, that's something historians are still debating. Some people think there might have been powerful people working behind the scenes, maybe, swayed by arguments about, her mental state or the pressures she faced as a woman in those times.
It's interesting to think about that, the social context. We're talking about 19th century America. when women were pretty much confined to the home. Wives, mothers, homemakers.
And on the surface, Robinson seemed to fit that mold perfectly, the picture of domesticity, involved in her church, community activities. But under that carefully constructed facade, she was harboring this incredibly dark secret. In a way, her actions completely shattered those expectations.
Yeah, it's like she was living this double life, conforming on the outside while secretly rebelling in this horrific way. Do you think that rebellion, that desire to break free, could have played a part in her crimes?
It's definitely an interesting theory. I mean, we can never truly understand someone's mind. But it's worth thinking about how those societal norms, those expectations, might have contributed to her psychological state. Was it just greed, like many believed? Or was there something more going on? Frustration, a lust for power, maybe a need to control things, in a world where she felt powerless?
Those are some really thought-provoking questions. And even after she was convicted, more disturbing details about Robinson's crimes came out. Like the new owner of her house, he found a hidden box full of rat poison.
Yeah, chilling, isn't it? Like a reminder that even after she was caught, Robinson was still this enigma, her motives still shrouded in mystery. But that discovery, it really cemented her guilt in the public's mind.
It's like she was this phantom moving silently through society, leaving death in her wake. But there was one instance where her actions almost came to light earlier. Do you remember the case of her husband, Moses?
Yeah, Moses. His death was initially put down to natural causes. They thought he drank cold water after overheating, something like that. But the insurance company, they were suspicious. They actually challenged the claim and refused to pay out the policy.
Really? So if they had looked into it more, maybe Robinson would have been caught sooner.
It's definitely possible. The insurance company's skepticism, it was an early warning sign, a missed opportunity to find the truth. Makes you wonder how many other clues were overlooked or just dismissed during those 5 years.
It really shows the limitations of forensic science back then. Today, a case like this, it would be investigated completely differently.
Oh, for sure.
Toxicology reports, DNA evidence, cameras everywhere. It'd be a lot harder to pull off something like that now.
Yeah, the advances in technology, they've revolutionized how we investigate crime.
Imagine this case happening today.
Investigators would be analyzing trace evidence, reconstructing timelines, creating psychological profiles to understand her motives, her methods, the whole thing.
But even with all that, we have to remember that criminals are always adapting.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a constant game of cat and mouse, right?
Exactly. In cases like Sarah Jane Robinson's, they're stark reminders that even with all our fancy technology, the human element is still crucial. The ability to observe, analyze, connect the dots, those skills are just as important now as they were back then.
And it's that human element that makes this story so captivating, don't you think? The fact that this seemingly ordinary woman could be capable of such calculated cruelty.
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions about who can commit these kinds of acts. It forces us to face the darkness that can hide beneath the surface of anyone. And that's the power of true crime. It shows us the complexities of human behavior and makes us ask these uncomfortable questions about ourselves and the world we live in.
It's amazing how one story can open up all these different avenues of thought. We've talked about her motives, the time period, how forensic science has changed. But there's one thing I keep coming back to, and that's her nickname, the Boston Borgia. What's the connection there?
Oh yeah, the Borgias. Interesting, right? So back in the Renaissance, there were this powerful Italian family, infamous for being, well, ruthless. And they supposedly used poison to get rid of their enemies.
So they gave Robinson that nickname because they saw her crimes as, similarly planned out. Cold-blooded, using poison as her weapon.
Exactly. It was a way to emphasize the premeditation, that it wasn't a crime of passion, but a calculated move for her own personal gain. It also created this kind of historical link, connecting her to a family known for intrigue and, well, treachery.
Yeah, it's a powerful comparison. And it makes me wonder, were there other female serial killers who liked to use poison?
Actually, yeah. Especially during the 19th century, poisoning was, I guess you could say, a popular method. For women who turned to serial murder, it was often seen as a woman's weapon, because it didn't require physical strength, and you could do it discreetly at home.
That's a chilling thought, but I guess it makes sense. Given the limitations women faced back then, poison was easy to get.
Right? Think about arsenic. It was in everything. Rat poison, insecticides, easy to obtain, and if you were clever, hard to detect.
So something meant to kill pests became her weapon for killing people. It's, unsettling is an understatement, but what can we learn from Sarah Jane Robinson's story? What takeaways can we, get from this deep dive?
I think it reminds us that crime, especially violence, it can come in many forms. And the people who commit these acts, they can be anyone. It forces us to look beyond stereotypes and realize that darkness can be anywhere, hidden under what seems normal.
Yeah, her story also shows us that history, it's full of these dark and twisted tales, and there's a reason we're drawn to them, right? We're fascinated by the darker side of humanity. And these stories give us a glimpse into that. They make us confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And while we might never fully understand why someone would do these things, exploring these cases lets us wrestle with big questions about good and evil, justice, punishment, about the struggle between our better nature and the darker impulses we all have.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening. I feel like we've really gone beyond the surface here.
I'm glad to hear that. And for those listening, I hope this has made you curious about other historical cases, about criminal psychology, forensic investigation. There's so much out there to discover.
And remember, as you explore those stories, look at them critically. Think about the historical context, what information is missing, and the ethics.
Well said.
And on that note, we'll mess up this deep dive into the chilling world of Sarah Jane Robinson, the Boston Borgia. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds curious.